Have you ever wondered what happens when love meets prejudice? The millionaire's parents forced the black woman to sign a prenuptial agreement. Then she learns that her father is a secret billionaire. The pen trembled in her hands as Regina watched her every move with a cold smile of satisfaction. Sign on the dotted line, dear. It's just a formality to protect the family fortune, said her mother-in-law in that condescending tone that Camila had learned to hate over the past 6 months. The prenuptial agreement lay there, spread out on the mahogany desk in the Montero family office, 15 pages of legal humiliation that basically said, "You are worthless and always will be." Camila Santos, 27, a math teacher at a public school, never imagined that the love of her life would put her through this. Daniel, her fiancé, sat next to his mother, avoiding looking directly at her. The man who had promised to fight the world alongside her, now seemed more interested in studying his own Italian shoes. "Camila, you understand that this is necessary, don't you?" Regina continued, her voice dripping with false kindness. "Daniel has worked hard to build his career in the family business. And considering your financial situation, well, we need to make sure his intentions are genuine. The financial situation, elegant code for you're black, poor, and obviously after our money." The clauses were brutal. No rights to property acquired before or during the marriage, alimony limited to 2 years in the event of divorce, and a special clause that would leave her with nothing if she brought shame or embarrassment to the family. As if her very existence wasn't considered embarrassing enough. "Do you have any questions about the terms?" asked the family lawyer, a 60-year-old man who looked at her as if she were a particularly unpleasant insect. Camila took a deep breath. For months, she had swallowed comments about her exotic hair, forced smiles when Regina introduced her as Daniel's teacher girlfriend, and pitying looks from the family's wealthy friends who clearly thought she didn't belong there. "Actually, I have a question," Camila said calmly, surprising everyone in the room. "Does this agreement include any assets I might inherit from my family?" Regina laughed, a high-pitched, unpleasant sound. "Oh dear, what assets? Isn't your father just an office worker?" The silence that followed was charged with tension. Camila looked at Daniel, who finally raised his eyes, looking uncomfortable with his mother's explicit cruelty. For a moment, she almost told the truth. She almost revealed the secret that her father Zhao had kept all his life. She almost explained why a man who could buy and sell the Montero family 10 times over chose to live in a modest house and drive a used car. But she didn't. Instead, she signed the agreement with a calmness that left Regina slightly uneasy. "There," said Camila, handing back the pen. "I hope this brings you the peace of mind you were looking for." As she left the office, Camila held her head high with a serene smile on her lips. What the Montero family didn't know was that every word of contempt, every condescending glance, every moment of humiliation was being carefully filed away in her memory. Wait, could this secret change everything for Camila? 3 months later, when the phone rang in the middle of the night with the news of her father's sudden death, Camila couldn't imagine that her life was about to change in a way that would make the prenuptial agreement seem like a bad joke. If you're enjoying this story of revenge and justice, don't forget to subscribe to the Black Voices channel. Because what happened when Camila discovered the truth about her father will make you question everything you think about power, money, and the art of underestimating the right people. The humiliations began subtly, as they always do in families that have mastered the art of elegant prejudice for generations. The week after the agreement was signed, Regina organized a dinner to officially introduce her future daughter-in-law to high society. The invitation arrived by email with a seemingly innocent note: dress code, elegant cocktail attire. "I'm sure you'll be able to find something appropriate, dear." The implicit message was crystal clear. "You don't belong here, but we'll let you try to fit in anyway." Camila arrived at the 5-star restaurant wearing her only decent black dress, the same one she had bought for her college graduation 3 years earlier. Meanwhile, Regina's friends paraded around in outfits that cost more than a teacher's annual salary. "What a charming dress," commented Isabella, wife of a federal judge, with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "It's vintage, isn't it? I love this trend of reusing old pieces." Daniel, sitting next to his mother, smiled nervously and muttered something about Camila having good taste in classic pieces. He didn't have the courage to say that she simply couldn't afford another dress. During dinner, the questions were surgical. Regina had orchestrated each one like an interrogation disguised as small talk. Camila teaches at a public school, doesn't she? Asked Victoria, the headmistress of an elite private school. How admirable. It must be challenging working with those kinds of students. Those kinds of students, Camila repeated calmly, cutting her meat with pinpoint precision. Well, you know, Victoria continued, taking a generous sip of wine. Children from broken homes, without resources, without proper guidance at home. Camila chewed slowly, swallowed, and then smiled. Actually, my students surprise me every day. Yesterday, an 8-year-old girl explained to me how her mother, a cleaning lady, works 3 jobs to support 4 children on her own. We talked about determination, perseverance, and dignity. They were fascinating concepts to discuss. The silence at the table was heavy. Regina cleared her throat and quickly changed the subject, but the systematic humiliations were just beginning. The following week, Daniel took her to see the family business. Monto and Associates occupied 2 entire floors of a corporate building in the financial center with panoramic views of the city and furniture that looked like it had come out of an architecture magazine. This will be your office one day, said Roberto, Daniel's father, showing her a spacious room when you take over as president. Daniel smiled proudly. But Camila noticed something interesting. Roberto didn't even include her in the conversation. He talked about his son's future as if she were invisible, a temporary presence that would eventually be replaced by someone more suitable. During the visit, Regina made a point of introducing her to each employee in the same way. This is Camila, Daniel's girlfriend. She's a teacher. The tone was the same as if she were saying, she has a contagious disease, but we're being polite. The last straw came 2 weeks later during a family charity event. Camila was talking to other wives when she heard Regina talking on the phone in the hallway, unaware that she was nearby. Don't worry, dear. It's just a phase, Regina said, clearly talking about Daniel and Camila. You know how young men are. They need to experiment before settling down with someone of their own level. She's exotic, but temporary. The word exotic cut like a knife. Camila stood still, listening to every word. Daniel is already beginning to notice the incompatibilities. The class difference is very obvious, and honestly, we need to protect the family fortune. Did you see the agreement she signed? She didn't even hesitate. It only confirms our suspicions about her true intentions. That night, Camila confronted Daniel about what she had heard. His reaction was revealing. She didn't mean it, he muttered, avoiding her gaze. My mother sometimes speaks without thinking. Your mother called me exotic and temporary, Daniel. And you're defending her. I'm not defending anyone. It's just that, well, you have to understand her perspective. She comes from a different generation. She only wants the best for me. And I'm not the best for you. Daniel was silent for too long. When he finally spoke, his words confirmed all of Camila's fears. You're wonderful, but our situation is complicated. Maybe we can work on it gradually. Show my family that I deserve to be treated like a human being. It's not that simple, Camila. But it was exactly that simple. And at that moment, Camila understood that she was fighting a war in which she was the only combatant on her side. That same night, alone in her small apartment, she called her father. Zhao answered on the first ring as he always did when she needed him. Dad, have you ever been through something like this? Have you ever felt completely out of place in a place where you should belong? Zhao was silent for a moment. Daughter, I've been through things that would make those people reconsider everything they think about class and power. But I've learned that dignity doesn't depend on the approval of others. It depends on you knowing who you are, regardless of what they think about you. Sometimes I feel like I'm fighting a battle I can't win. Zhao's voice became strangely serious. There are things about our family, about me, that I've never told you. Things that changed my perspective on what really matters in life. When you're ready, we'll talk about it. She didn't know that conversation would never happen. 3 weeks later, Zhao would suffer the heart attack that would change everything. But at that moment, as she hung up the phone, Camila made a silent decision. Every condescending comment, every look of contempt was being carefully catalogued in her memory. The Montero family thought they had tamed a lioness. What they didn't know was that they were only feeding her fury, one cruel word at a time. Get ready, this twist will leave you speechless. The call came at 2 o'clock in the morning on a rainy Tuesday. Camila woke up with a start to the insistent ringing of the phone, and the tense voice of the hospital doctor confirmed her worst nightmare. Zhao had suffered a massive heart attack during the night shift. He didn't suffer, were the doctor's words, but they did not ease the pain that settled in Camila's chest like a lead weight. Daniel accompanied her to the hospital, held her hand during the bureaucratic procedures, and whispered words of comfort that sounded empty against the echo of the cold corridors. For a few hours, Camila almost forgot the recent humiliations and remembered why she had fallen in love with him. The funeral was simple, just as Zhao had always wanted. A few co-workers showed up. Neighbors brought modest flowers and Camila cried silently as the coffin was lowered. Regina and Roberto attended, but they were clearly uncomfortable with the simplicity of the funeral in a humble neighborhood chapel. How sad. Regina whispered to Roberto loud enough for Camila to hear. Poor people never get to give their loved ones a dignified send-off. It was then that Camila realized even in their grief, they couldn't stop judging. A week later, while sorting through her father's few belongings, Camila found a sealed envelope with her name on it written in Zhao's careful handwriting. My dear daughter, the letter read. If you are reading this, it means that the time has come for you to learn the whole truth about our family. Go to the Central Bank downtown branch and ask for Dr. Harrison Miller. He has specific instructions on how to proceed. And Camila, be prepared to discover that everything you thought you knew about our situation was completely wrong. 2 days later, Camila was sitting in the elegant office of Harrison Miller, a 60-year-old lawyer with gray hair and suits that cost more than her monthly salary. Miss Santos, he said, studying documents in a thick folder. Your father was very clear about when and how to reveal this information. He wanted to make sure you were prepared for what you are about to discover. Harrison slid a series of documents across the desk: stock certificates, bank statements, investment reports, all in the name of Zhao Santos. Your father, Harrison continued calmly, was the founder and CEO of TechnoSolutions, a software company that revolutionized digital security systems in the 90s. When he sold the company in 2002, the transaction was worth $4.2 billion. Camila blinked slowly, trying to process the words. That's impossible. My father worked in an accounting office. Technically, yes. He managed his fortune's investments through a discrete holding company. After selling TechnoSolutions, your father made a very conscious decision to live modestly in order to give you an upbringing based on values, not privileges. Harrison opened another folder. Your current inheritance, after taxes and planned donations your father made to educational institutions, totals $2.8 billion. The silence in the office was deafening. I need a moment, Camila murmured, and Harrison nodded understandingly as she absorbed the information. A single image came to her mind. Regina signing the prenuptial agreement with that satisfied smile, explaining how important it was to protect the family fortune from the poor teacher who was obviously after the Montero money. Dr. Miller, she said finally, how long would it take to liquidate some investments without affecting the main portfolio? It depends on the amount. For smaller amounts, a few days. Why do you ask? Camila smiled for the first time since her father's death. Because I need to buy some things. Over the next few days, Camila began executing a plan that Zhao had inadvertently planted in her mind. First, she hired a private investigator to map out all of the Montero family's businesses. She discovered that their company, impressive as it seemed, was worth approximately $50 million, a respectable sum, but ridiculously small compared to her new reality. Second, she began asking discreet questions about the properties Monto and Associates managed. She discovered that several smaller companies owed the firm significant favors and that Roberto had made some questionable investments recently. Third, and most importantly, she kept her discovery a secret. Daniel noticed that she was calmer, more confident, but he attributed that to the grieving process. You're handling all this very well, he said during dinner. I'm proud of how you're coping with the loss of your father. Thank you, Camila replied, cutting her meat with precision. My father taught me that the greatest lessons come in the most difficult moments. She didn't lie. She just left out a few details. A week later, Regina called with a special surprise. Honey, I've organized a charity dinner for Saturday. It's for a charity that helps needy families. I thought it would be perfect for you. A cause that surely touches your heart considering your background. Condescension dripped from every word. Regina was literally inviting Camila to an event about poverty because she assumed she would identify with needy people. It'll be wonderful, Camila replied sweetly. I can't wait. On the Friday before the event, Harrison called. I got the reports you asked for. The Montero company is facing some cash flow problems. Nothing catastrophic yet, but Roberto has made some risky investments in real estate that aren't paying off as expected. They'll probably need additional capital in the next 6 months. Perfect, Camila said, a new determination shining in her eyes. That evening, she tried on the dress she had bought for the charity dinner. An elegant piece from an understated boutique that cost more than her old annual salary. It wasn't flashy, but anyone with an eye for fashion would recognize the quality and the price tag. As she looked at herself in the mirror, Camila thought about the prenuptial agreement tucked away in her drawer. Every humiliating clause, every word that reduced her to a potential gold digger, every line that made her seem greedy for simply existing. Regina had drafted that document to protect the family from a threat she herself had created in her prejudiced mind. What she didn't know was that she had just given Camila the perfect motivation for a lesson that would stay with her forever. For a moment, Camila felt a twinge of something that could have been pity for the Montero family. They had no idea what was about to happen. Then she remembered all the times they had made her feel small, inadequate, too grateful just to be included in their elitist world. The pity evaporated like morning mist. Saturday was going to be interesting. Very interesting. The charity dinner was in full swing when Camila decided the time had come. Regina had planned everything meticulously. She would be presented as an example of overcoming poverty through education, an inspiring story to entertain the wealthy guests as they felt virtuous for donating crumbs to the less fortunate. And now, Regina announced into the microphone. I would like to introduce someone very special. Camila Santos, our future daughter-in-law, is a teacher at a public school and knows firsthand the difficulties we are here to help alleviate. Polite applause echoed through the hall as Camila rose gracefully. She wore an elegant, understated dress that did not draw attention to its exorbitant price tag. Thank you, Regina, Camila said, her calm voice filling the silence. It's true that I know financial hardship well. My father always taught me that a person's true value isn't in his bank account. Regina smiled smugly, thinking she was getting confirmation that Camila was indeed poor and grateful for the opportunity to be there. But Camila continued, he also taught me that sometimes we have to choose when to reveal our true nature. Something in her tone made Daniel frown. Regina continued smiling, but a small wrinkle of confusion appeared on her forehead. I'm going to make a donation to the institution we're supporting today, Camila said calmly. Dr. Miller, would you come over here, please? Harrison Miller, elegant in his impeccable suit, emerged from among the guests carrying a leather briefcase. Who is that man? Roberto whispered to Regina, who shook her head, not understanding. This is Dr. Harrison Miller from Miller & Associates, Camila announced. He is the lawyer responsible for administering my father's estate. João Santos. The name meant nothing to Regina, but some guests in the hall began to whisper among themselves. Older businessmen recognized that surname from somewhere. João Santos, repeated a man in the audience. Isn't that Santos from Techno Solutions? The silence that followed was heavy as lead. Harrison opened his briefcase and took out a check. On behalf of the Santos family, I would like to make a donation of $500,000 to this very important cause. The room exploded in murmurs. $500,000 was more than most of those present would donate in a decade. Regina was speechless. Camila, dear, this is impossible. I don't have what? Camila asked softly. Money, class, enough value for your family. Daniel stood up abruptly. Camila, what is going on here? What is going on? She replied, her voice cutting through the air like a knife. Is that you have spent months treating me like a gold digger because of the color of my skin and my humble origins? You made a point of humiliating me, of making me sign a prenuptial agreement that basically called me a prostitute in disguise. The room was now completely silent. Regina looked as if she had seen a ghost. My father was João Santos, founder of Techno Solutions. When he sold the company in 2002, it was worth $4.2 billion. Camila paused, letting the number echo. My current inheritance is $2.8 billion. Roberto fell heavily into his chair. Regina began to shake her head in denial. That means, Camila continued with a serene smile, that I could buy your company, Daniel, 23 times and still have money left over for tips. Daniel was as pale as a sheet. Why? Why didn't you tell me? Because I wanted to see who you really were when you thought I had nothing. And you showed me exactly that. Camila turned to Regina, who looked as if she were about to faint. About that prenuptial agreement you made me sign, she said, taking an envelope out of her purse. With deliberate movements, she tore the document into small pieces and let the fragments fall to the floor. I don't need it anymore. Not because it's worthless legally, but because I finally understand that I would never marry someone from a family that sees me as a threat instead of a person. Daniel tried to approach her. Camila, we can talk about this. We can work it out. Work it out? She laughed, a clear sound that echoed through the silent hall. Daniel, you watched me sign an agreement that would leave me with nothing if I disgraced your family. You watched your mother call me exotic and temporary. You never defended me because deep down you believed they were right. Harrison approached and whispered something in Camila's ear. She nodded. Oh, and just for the record, she said, turning back to Roberto, Dr. Miller informed me that your company is facing some financial difficulties, cash flow problems, investments that didn't yield as expected. Roberto swallowed hard. I could help, of course. $15 million would solve all your problems. She paused dramatically, but I think I'll invest that money in educational programs for underprivileged children. After all, Regina always emphasized how I should identify with, how did she put it? People in my situation. Regina finally found her voice, but it came out as a squeak. Camila, please. You have to understand that we didn't know. If you had known who I was, Camila repeated slowly. You knew exactly who I was. A black woman, intelligent, hardworking, and dignified. But that wasn't enough for you, was it? You only respect bank accounts. The silence in the hall was deafening. Some guests began to whisper among themselves, clearly embarrassed by what they had witnessed. The Montero family, Camila said, her voice echoing with an authority they had never heard from her before. You gave me the greatest gift of my life. You showed me that people who only value money are never worthy of my time or my love. She turned to leave, then paused and looked back over her shoulder. Oh, and Regina, that smug smile you had when I signed the agreement. Cherish that memory because it was the last moment you ever felt superior to me. As Camila walked toward the exit with Harrison at her side, the hall remained in complete silence. Regina sat with tears streaming down her face, finally understanding that she had lost not only a daughter-in-law, but any chance at redemption. Daniel ran after her into the parking lot, but Camila was already getting into a limousine he hadn't noticed before. Camila, wait. This is crazy. We love each other. She looked at him through the open window. Daniel, you loved the idea of saving me. You never really loved me. If you had, you would have torn up that agreement before I could sign it. The limousine drove away, leaving Daniel alone in the parking lot, finally understanding that he had lost the most extraordinary woman he had ever known because of pure cowardice and prejudice. Inside the hall, Regina looked at the pieces of the prenuptial agreement scattered on the floor, realizing that each fragment represented a lost opportunity, a burned bridge, a lesson that had come too late. Camila's revenge had not been loud or dramatic. It had been elegant, devastating, and absolutely perfect. She had not destroyed the Montero family with anger. She had let them destroy themselves with their own small-mindedness. At the back of the hall, some guests were already whispering about how the poor teacher had turned out to be one of the richest women in the country and how the prestigious Montero family had made the stupidest mistake of their lives by underestimating someone based on racial and social prejudice. The story would spread through the social circles of the elite in a matter of hours. Regina and Roberto would never be able to look at their peers again without wondering if they were whispering about their ignorance and arrogance. But what they didn't know yet was that public humiliation would only be the beginning of the consequences of underestimating Camila Santos. 2 years later, Camila was in her office on the 40th floor of a building she had bought herself, overseeing the inauguration of the 5th Santos Foundation School across the country. Her education investment company had become a national benchmark, and she regularly appeared on magazine covers as one of the most influential women in the country. The same prenuptial agreement that was supposed to humiliate her now hung framed on her wall, not as a trophy of revenge, but as a reminder to never again allow anyone to question her worth. "Mrs. Santos," said her assistant as she entered the room. "The Montero family is in the reception area. They say it's about a business opportunity." Camila smiled. Over the past 2 years, she had watched from afar as the Montero empire gradually crumbled. The company faced lawsuit after lawsuit for mismanagement. Roberto had declared personal bankruptcy and Regina had been expelled from every social club after details of her arrogance spread through elite circles. Daniel had tried to contact her countless times, but Camila never responded. She had heard through the grapevine that he was now working as a freelance consultant, a dramatic fall for someone who considered himself the heir to an empire. "Tell them I don't have any meetings available for the next 5 years, Camila replied calmly. Through the window, she watched Regina and Roberto leave the building. Clearly defeated, Regina, who had once called her exotic and temporary, now walked hunched over, weighed down by the burden of her own choices. That night, at home with Marcus, her social worker husband, who loved her even before he knew she had a bank account, Camila reflected on the most valuable lesson her father had taught her. "You know what's ironic," she said, serving the dinner she had prepared herself. "They tried to make me feel small because they thought I didn't have any money, but they found out that money was never what made me great." Marcus smiled, kissing her forehead. "Your father knew what he was doing, didn't he? He taught me that revenge isn't about destroying those who hurt you. It's about building a life so extraordinary that they realize exactly what they lost by underestimating you." João Santos had raised a daughter who didn't need to prove her worth to anyone because she knew exactly who she was. And perhaps that was the most valuable legacy of all. The best revenge against prejudice is not to lower those who judge you. It is to rise so high that they are too small to reach you. If this story of overcoming adversity touched your heart, subscribe to the Black Voices channel for more stories about people who turned injustice into fuel for success.